Hey there, my name is David McGrath, Better Life Abroad coach and expert. And if you're watching this video, it could be for two reasons. One, that you're very good at English, you have great competency in all four skills, but you don't always feel confident. Or it could be because you are currently developing your language skills and you'd just like to get better. If there's one thing I've noticed from working with people from different countries, it's that language is actually a fundamental part. And in this case, it's English. So a couple of years ago, I was living in South Africa, and I had a client who had relocated on a business assignment from Argentina. And he was a senior level manager. So he was in charge of the local workforce who spoke predominantly in English. And when he came to me, I was asking him, your English is obviously very good. You have great vocabulary, you communicate flawlessly, and you have great skills. What is it that you want to achieve? What do you actually want from this? And he basically said, in a nutshell, that he just wanted to feel more comfortable when he was communicating with his workforce. So it was just confidence. Another example is a lady I was working with, and she was Italian, qualified psychotherapist and psychologist, and she had achieved so much, in her life. She had already produced theses, academic papers. She had presented international conferences and workshops, and all in English. So she obviously had a great command of the language, but again, she felt the same way. She felt this insecurity, she just questioned her own ability. And this played out in every aspect of her life. It gave her, just caused her to feel insecure and unable to make progress in the way that she would have liked at certain times. So these are just two examples of how a lack of confidence can be so pervasive, even in people who demonstrate great success and a great command over the language. Then there's other kind of people. There's a client I worked with who had managed to establish his life here in Dublin in the IT industry and had done very well for himself. When he arrived here, he admitted to being very poor at English and not knowing very much about the language at all. But through the years, he had developed his skills and he had managed to score a very good position in this company. However, talking to him and listening to him, I could, his life is great. It's working really well. He's got relationships. He's got a big social circle. His job is going very well. But I can recognize that if he could develop his language skills just a little bit more, he'd actually experience a greater standard of living here in Dublin. And so that's the other end of the stick. So when it comes to language, I've recognized that when it comes to fluency is dependent on how confident you feel. And your confidence is really dependent on what your personal standards are. And we can measure these. You can measure your confidence, you can measure your own personal standards. Let's take, for example, you're talking to a friend, and maybe you're talking to your friend about politics in your country, just to come up with an example. And you're explaining to your friend the way it is in your country, the situation, whatever. And at the end of while you're talking to your friend, you realize they have no idea what you're really saying. Now you could look at this situation and you could say, well, it's because they just don't understand the politics of my country. They're never going to get it. They didn't grow up there. They don't know what it's like. Or you could say, my friend doesn't understand me because my English is terrible, or because I don't have the vocabulary I need, or you could blame some aspect of your language skills. But maybe you have no problem talking one-to-one, Maybe it could be a challenge for you to speak in groups. Speaking in groups is a completely different dynamic. When you're in a group situation, what can happen, a lot of people, is that they just go quiet because it's so fast-paced and it can be difficult just to keep up with what everybody's saying, that it's easier just to stay quiet. And in social situations, this can be all right. But in professional situations, or in situations where you're trying to get to know people, this can actually be counterproductive. At a meeting, for example, you could have very valid points, you could have concerns, or you could have opinions which could be very useful, but you're afraid to offer them just because you don't know when to make your point, or you feel uncomfortable opening your mouth in front of a large group of people. So then this can have a negative effect. There are certain aspects of language which are particularly difficult or can be challenging, and those are humour and cultural nuances. You might have found yourself in a situation where people are making a joke, but you actually didn't know they were making a joke. Or maybe you've tried to make a joke and the people you're talking with just didn't find it funny, or they couldn't connect to it in the way that you had intended. Another aspect is the cultural nuances. I know here in Ireland, sport is a big thing. When people make references, there's a lot of references to sport, to music too. But every culture has their own particular details, and when you're living in a foreign country, the details of that country are very specific. And if you're in a conversation, you don't know what somebody's saying, it might not be because of your English language level or your competency in the language. It could be because of your knowledge of the culture itself. So from working with people from other countries and listening to their stories, a huge part of developing a successful life abroad is basically by improving your relationships. And so this is like relationships with obviously your loved ones, your family, your children, your partner, your extended family, but also with your workmates, with the people in the local community, your neighbors. Relationships are a fundamental part of our life, and some of these relationships are more intense and others are less intense. However, our relationships are dependent on our communication skills quite often. And if we don't feel like we're communicating or expressing who we are to certain individuals in our lives, then it can cause us to feel like we're not actually connecting with them, or we feel misunderstood, or it just creates a sense of inadequacy or inferiority. And this can cause people to feel really, really uncomfortable, and it can affect your confidence, your overall confidence living in a foreign country. So because of this, I've designed the English Up program. And the objective of this program fundamentally is to help foreign professionals to reconnect to English in a way which leaves them feeling confident and competent to express in whatever situation they might be in. So the program comes in two different ways, okay? It's a 30-day program, and there's the English Up Lite, which is for people who are not really, they're just busy and they don't really want to commit to doing out-of-session tasks, homework basically. And then there's the English Up Intensive. And the English Up Intensive is basically like a mini project, and it will require some out-of-session work. So you'll be required to do some reading, to submit a writing, and to prepare short presentations. As part of the one-on-one session then, I'll give you feedback on your writing and I'll give you feedback on your oral presentation. You'll also have an opportunity to look at some of the vocabulary that you've come across and to build on your vocabulary. And this will include phrasal verbs, collocations, idiomatic expressions, and maybe even slang. So the details of this program are below this video, and you can read them more carefully if you wish. And then once you've made up your mind, just fill in the short form and submit it to me, and then I'll get back to you and we can talk about how we can take our next step. And that's it. If you're not actually looking for English lessons or you're not actually looking to develop your English language skills, but you've got other challenges that are facing you in your life abroad, then you can just visit the homepage www.betterlifeabroad.com, and there's information there that will help you to get in contact with me in regards to those challenges. So that's it. So just fill in the form below. There's the crows. They're heading off to bed soon. Just fill in the form below and submit it to me, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Take care.